All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a single, really powerful source, a chapter from Deuteronomy that's about 3,000 years old. And it lays out one of the world's first ever codes for conducting a war. It's basically a blueprint that covers everything from the psychology of soldiers to the ethics of a siege.
It's a huge question, right? Have there always been rules for war? We tend to think of things like the Geneva Conventions as a pretty modern invention. But this desire to put some kind of order on the absolute chaos of war, well, that's ancient. And this text is just a remarkable window into that impulse.
So, where does this ancient rulebook even start? You might think with weapons or tactics, maybe. Nope. The very first step is all about the mind. It's about preparing the soldier's psychological and spiritual state for what's about to happen.
Imagine this. Before any fighting starts, a priest would actually step forward and address the troops with these exact words. It's a powerful speech designed to reframe the entire conflict as a mission with divine backing. The goal was simple, really: replace fear with faith.
Okay, so after this big spiritual pep talk, the military officers step in. And their job is, well, a lot more practical. It seems building an effective army wasn't just about who was ready and willing to fight, but, and this is so important, it was also about who shouldn't be there.
So the officers would announce 4 very specific exemptions from service. The first 3 are all about these huge life moments. If you just built the house, if you just planted a vineyard, or if you are about to get married, you were sent home. But it's that last one, that one is just fascinating. Anyone who was afraid or faint-hearted was also sent home. And the reason given? So that their fear wouldn't spread through the ranks like a disease. I mean, that's an incredible piece of ancient military psychology.
Okay, so the army is prepared, and the fearful have been weeded out. The focus now shifts to the enemy, and the very first move when approaching an enemy city isn't an attack, it's an offer of peace.
And let's be clear, this wasn't just a polite suggestion. The text makes it sound like a command. Diplomacy was the mandatory first step, but this offer creates this crucial fork in the road, and it leads to wildly different outcomes that all depend on one key factor: the city's location.
So, first up, let's look at the rules for what the text calls distant cities. Basically, these are cities located outside the specific land that the Israelites were commanded to inherit.
For these distant cities, the outcomes were pretty stark. If they accepted the offer of peace, their people were put to forced labor. Simple as that. But if they refused, the city was besieged. And if the city fell, the rules were brutal. All the men were to be killed, while the women, children, and all the property were taken as plunder.
But, and this is a huge but, those rules only applied to the distant cities. When the army approached the cities inside the Promised Land itself, the commands changed completely. The whole playbook got thrown out.
You really have to get this, because this one geographical distinction is the absolute key to understanding this whole code. The rules of engagement weren't universal. They were tiered, and it was all based on who the enemy was and where they lived.
And the contrast is, well, it's jarring. For the cities of inheritance, there's no peace offer even mentioned, and the outcome of a victory isn't about plunder. The command is absolute. Do not leave alive anything that breathes. It's a directive for the complete destruction of the entire population.
So you have to ask why. Why such a drastic and terrible difference? Well, the text gives a very explicit reason. This wasn't just about military conquest. It was framed as a preventative measure. It was rooted in this deep fear of cultural and religious contamination. The goal was to completely eliminate any influence from the local nation's practices.
And then, right after those incredibly harsh commands, the text takes this really surprising turn. It introduces a nuanced rule that seems almost out of place, a rule that doesn't focus on people, but on trees.
It all hinges on this powerful rhetorical question. Are the trees people that you should besiege them? It's this moment that forces the warrior to just pause and draw a sharp line between human enemies and the natural world around them.
And the rule that comes from this is actually incredibly pragmatic. Fruit-bearing trees, you have to preserve them because you can eat their fruit, their food source. But non-fruit-bearing trees, those could be cut down and used to build siege works. It's basically an early form of resource management, right in the middle of a war.
So let's pull this all together. What are the big takeaways? First, that psychological preparation was absolutely paramount. Second, that diplomacy, that offer of peace, was a required first step, but only in certain cases. Third, there was this stark, two-tiered system of engagement. And finally, believe it or not,
The code even included specific environmental restrictions.
Which leaves us with a final thought. When you look at a text like this, you're doing more than just studying old rules. You're seeing a society's blueprint for survival, its deepest fears about its own identity, its relationship with its neighbors, and the future it was fighting to build. Because what a society chooses to control in the absolute chaos of war, that reveals everything about what it truly holds sacred.